Galvanic, so we're a digital health company and we're using technology to help people improve their ability to manage stress. We work with a number of companies improving employee mental well-being. We work with sports teams looking at mental fitness. We work with schools looking to improve their students' mental well-being. In my role, I work with researchers doing research around stress measurement, but more importantly, developing different interventions to help people manage stress. I also work with schools and also companies looking at improving mental well-being. So over about the next, here we go, forward. So over the next 40 minutes, I'll give you a bit of an overview in terms of how stress actually affects us, the importance of mental wellness, so looking at after your mental well-being, some of the different tools you can use to manage stress, and also how technology can be integrated into different corporate well-being programs, and some of the potential challenges you may face or may like to be aware of in terms of actually integrating it. So first of all, why manage stress? I'm going to ask you guys a question. I want you to think back over the last 24 hours. Has anyone faced with a stressful situation? Was it getting here in the morning, trying to juggle trains and tubes? Was it like me contending with delayed flights? It might be thinking about different personal challenges, even financial worries. I'm guessing by some of the nods that people have been faced with stressful situations. Stress is part and parcel of everyday life. It's something that affects everyone and affects everyone differently. Modern life is busy, stressful. Stress is part of everyday life, but negative affects our mental health and our mental well-being. So I want you guys to think about those different stressful situations. How does your body respond? Stress affects us all and affects us all differently. At a basic level, when you're faced with a stressful situation, it activates your fight or flight response, which has some hidden and some noticeable effects. So again, when you're faced with a stressful situation, you might have found your heart starting to pound. You may have found yourself getting sweaty. You may have found some negative thoughts or emotions entering your mind. You might have found your shoulders tensing. These are all really basic physiological, physical and emotional changes that happen as a result of stress. At a basic level, stress affects both our ability to work and also our physical and emotional well-being. From a work perspective, it reduces our ability to focus. It affects our decision making. Looking at decisions, it affects perhaps we tend to make more hasty decisions when we're under stress. Sometimes we suffer what's called reflection effect. That's where we're faced with a positive decision, we make more conservative decisions, and we're faced with a risky decision, we make more risky choices. It also affects our sleep, behaviour, and mood and emotional well-being. Actually, a study by CIPD found that workload was one of the leading causes of workplace stress within employees. That might be due to longer working hours, additional responsibilities, but also perhaps some of the personal challenges we face. A lot of people today are perhaps juggling caring after elderly parents, but also younger children. And again, while unfortunately stress affects us all, when we get into work, we can't necessarily close the door on that stress. It affects our ability to work. This is actually a figure that Mercer came up with in terms of 7% is the lost productivity. 7% of the payroll is the total of lost productivity due to stress. So while stress affects us all personally, it also has economic and social consequences as well. Whether that's in terms of looking at companies' financial performance, but also in terms of their employees' productivity. So some of the hidden causes from a company perspective might be lost productivity due to stress, poor decision making, perhaps presenteeism, where you have a lot of employees that may not necessarily be out from sick, but they're negatively affected by it. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Stress is, as I said, stress is a basic response to a stressful situation. We actually need a certain amount of stress to get through the day. It's all about finding our sweet spot, and it's all about finding our personal sweet spot. So again, some days we'll have a negative, some days we may be able to handle all the tasks, and the next day it might affect us differently, because stress affects everyone and affects everyone differently. It's all about finding that actual sweet spot. And so that's where, in terms of looking at mental well-being is, or mental health is our emotional and physiological well-being. It affects how we think, how we act, how we view the world, and how we deal with stressful situations. Again, you see a lot of talk in the media about mental health. It's one of the things that we should all be actively investing in. So we all know the importance of physical fitness. I know when I go for a walk, I'll feel the immediate benefit. I'll feel calmer, I might feel more energized, but I also know the long-term health benefits of being physically fit. It reduces my likelihood of being obese, of developing type 2 diabetes, and numerous other health conditions. Mental well-being is the exact same concept. It should be something we should all be actively investing in it on a regular basis. It's all about, I suppose, taking a more holistic look at well-being. So some of the different areas we should be looking at, things like sleep. So are we all getting our 8 hours sleep? Looking at our diet and nutrition, perhaps exercise as well, and also mental well-being. One of the things we tend to find with companies is they tend to be great at looking at things like nutrition and exercise. So they might have canteens in-house, they might have gyms on site, perhaps not looking at some of the external factors that might also be affecting their employees' productivity and well-being. So whether that's the amount of sleep they're getting, so are they getting their recommended 8 hours, looking at their mental well-being, their cognitive frame of mind, because again, while you can have different interventions in place, looking at perhaps gyms or canteens, if someone isn't in the right frame of mind, they won't be able to access those different services or be able to benefit them, make the most out of them. Other things that companies should be looking at is in terms of actually not just those 4 pillars, but also a more holistic approach. So perhaps looking at people's workload, looking at also having in place the different interventions to help someone that is negatively affected by stress. So in terms of psychological support, perhaps EAPs or different programs in place. And also looking at actually the organisational culture as a whole. If companies are looking to be a better working environment, is looking at in terms of the leadership. So are everyone actively investing in their well-being, whether that's mental well-being, physical or nutrition. So different ways that people can look at managing stress. It's all about how you react to stress in the moment and also afterwards. So in the moment is actually, well, how do you react from a stressful situation? Key to that is about staying in control. Control is one of the largest predictors of your health, your mental health and well-being. If you can stay in control, you can actively better manage stressful situations. So if you think about sports athletes, they're faced with really high pressure, high stressful situations, but when they're in control, they're actually able to perform at the best of their ability. So looking at in terms of ability to manage work, that's looking at perhaps staying in control in terms of looking at the different activities, the different tasks we have in place. So putting plans in place to better deal with those different tasks and also breaking them down. Looking at also in terms of how you actually view a stressful situation. So when you're faced with a stressful situation, you can view it as a challenge or a threat. If you view it as a challenge, you can think, okay, well, this is going to be difficult. These are the different things I'm going to be affected, but actually I can overcome it. If you view it as a threat, you tend to find that you focus on the effect of stress, so what it's causing to your body, and not actually the task at hand. And numerous research studies have shown that if you can get someone to view something as a challenge rather than a threat, they have a much better outcome. So actually a study that showed that if you've got a group of people and they looked at viewing something by saying, I am anxious or I am nervous. Both of those sayings activate your fight or flight response. But if you say, I am anxious, that activates it as a threat. If you say, I'm excited, that's an opportunity. So just by trying those different cognitive reframing, you can actually view stressful situations as being challenging. Likewise, if you can make someone aware of the different physical effects of stress, they're much more able to actually focus on the task at hand. So there's actually a research study that looked at some Navy personnel and got them to tactical decision-making tasks. So with that group, they gave them all the exact same information in terms of actually what the tasks they were going to have to do. But half the group, they also told them some of the different stresses they were going to be faced with. So it might be different obstacles, time pressures. They also told them as well how they will physically respond to stress. So their heart will start to pound, they might find their muscles getting tensed, and also gave them different tools. And the groups that were given that additional information were far less anxious and actually got a far better result than the group that were just told about the task. So basically being able to actually identify how stress affects you and then having the different tools in place, you're better able to manage stress in the moment. And key to that is all about staying in control. It's also looking about your physical and emotional well-being, both in the moment and also afterwards. So again, you might hear a lot about things like resilience. Resilience is all about how you bounce back after a stressful situation. Key to that is having the different coping mechanisms to manage stress, but also looking after yourself. So whether that's taking active breaks, both during a stressful situation, so in the moment, but also actively recovering afterwards. So if you've got a stressful day in the office, it's all about taking active breaks throughout that day, but also making sure you use, for example, your annual leave, or you use your weekends to actively recover to help you increase your resilience and therefore your ability to manage those stressful situations. Likewise, looking at things like sleep and work-life balance, it's all about getting a healthy balance in terms of actually giving yourself the time to recover. So now I'm going to play a video. I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a task, and then we're going to have a bit of an exercise after this. So this will hopefully play. No, this should, sorry.
Hello, I'm Ian Robertson. I'm Professor of Psychology, Trinity College, Dublin. Well, let me give you a little exercise. I want you to just, when I say focus, I want you to sit up straight, take a deep breath, and say the word focus to yourself. So, focus. Focus. Now that little routine, we call it self-alert training. That actually changes the chemistry and functioning of your brain just as much as any drug does. Taking a deep breath like that actually causes your skin conductance, your EDA, to spike about half a second after you've taken the deep breath. That's a physiological response in your brain. Sitting up straight actually also changes the blood flow to the frontal parts of your brain. And saying focus actually causes activity in the left front part of your brain, which helps you pay attention to the current goal. But that's just a little trick that we've applied in many different sets of problems, self-alerting, which is an example of how what we do controls the chemistry of our brain and thereby controls our emotions. So that's just an example of how we can get control of our stress if we learn little techniques and habits like that. It really helps with the external signal from HIP and other EDA devices.
So it's actually Professor Robinson. He's the head of psychology in Trinity College Dublin and also the chair of our scientific advisory board. Now, as you mentioned there, as I mentioned earlier as well, key to managing stress is all about learning to control your stress response. Part of that is being aware of actually, well, what's happening physiologically. So what's happening when you're faced with a stressful situation, but also what are the different tools and techniques you can actually do to manage your stress response. So now is where I'm going to ask for a volunteer. I just need one person to come up. And what we're going to do is we're going to try one of our apps. So if there's anyone who wants to, yeah, no problem at all. So as I said, key to managing stress is all about learning to control your stress response. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this later with one of our apps. So bear with me 2 seconds, I'm just going to connect this up here. This is the PIP. It's a little biosensor device that comes with a suite of apps that let you visualise your stress response. What I'm going to show here is our app called Relax and Race. So in this app, it's all about how do you stay calm and focused in a stressful situation. How we help people do that, or how biofeedback helps people, is we're putting you in an artificial stressful situation. So when they start this here, this lady is going to be in a race, right? And so she wants to win the race, but the only way she can win the race is by out-relaxing her opponent. She's racing against, in this case, she's racing against the average time of previous users. So the whole idea of this is putting you into an artificial stressful situation, and it's giving you a way of actually practicing those different stress responses in a controlled environment. So when you're faced with a real life stressful situation, you know what to do because you've already practiced in a controlled way. So what I'm going to do is stand over here. So what I'm going to do is you're going to look at the screen here. So when you start, you're going to be the green dragon. You're racing against the red dragon. Okay. So the whole idea is the more you relax, the faster and the higher the dragon flies.
Right, okay.
So if you hold that just gently there, so just in the gold plate senses, yeah, so just press gently like that there, right? Yeah, so you're going to look at the screen there. Yeah. So what you see on the top right hand corner is a little icon, so that's red. So as you relax, so perhaps try some deep breathing. You might find that'll hopefully go green. So if you want to try to take some deep breaths. So just try focusing on the dragon. so if you just try taking some deep breaths. You see it start to fly higher. Just focus on the dragon. So let's take a deep breath. Breathe in. Well done. Thank you very much. Do you want to take a seat here? So this is just one of the apps. It's all about how do you manage a moment. So how do you stay calm and focused? So you would have actually seen there the dragon flying up and down quite a bit. At a basic level, biofeedback is all about giving you an internal window into what's happening internally. It's very hard to control something you can't see. When you can visualize something externally, then you can consciously try different techniques to learn to manage it. Now this app doesn't include any guidance, so we don't introduce different relaxation techniques, but it's all about helping you identify what works best for you. And key to learning to manage stress is also about having different tasks or having different goals, and having a way of actually tracking your progress. So what we do at the end of each session is give someone a PIP score, so a percentage out of 100. And what you can also see is actually during a session, how often were your stress levels increasing, decreasing, or staying steady. And also, if I go back here, so if I can show, this will hopefully sync through to the internet. So it's going to take a little second to sync up. So as I say, key to manage stress is all about taking control and also taking active breaks. So what I can go down here, when I go see to this lady's score here, 51%, what you can also see is actually during her stress, this is what's called an event timeline, so actually during her session, when were her stress levels increasing, decreasing, or staying steady. So what you would have seen in real time during the race was at the very start, her dragon stayed quite flat, there was a lot of red events, because actually her stress levels are increasing. So she was probably standing up here thinking, oh my God, I'm in front of a lot of people, what am I going to do? But at a basic level, how biofeedback works, which is completely normal. But the whole thing then is, by practicing regularly, is you identify, well, what can you do to switch on that stress response? And then you teach yourself a new habit. So when you're faced with a stressful situation, you've changed your automatic reaction to stress by being able to switch on that stress response. So you'll be able to stay in control. And part of this app is, it's naturally a stressful situation. A race is stressful, but it's all about getting someone to practice in a controlled environment. Because again, when you can practice in a controlled environment, the more you practice, then when you're in a real life stressful situation, you know what to do. And this app is, that particular app is all about, I suppose, more stressful situations. We have other apps in terms of focus and relaxation. So just looking at some of the current stress management solutions we see a lot of companies doing, we tend to find that companies that we're working with tend to be focused more on the reactive. So looking at perhaps they've programs in place to help people that are already out with stress or stress-related conditions. And that's actually mirrored by a survey that CIPD did last year, and they found that 27% of organisations were still looking at reactive rather than proactive well-being interventions. What we also tend to find is a lot of companies are doing things like mindfulness workshops, stress management seminars, stress assessments. So looking at more once-off interventions as opposed to proactive tools to help people learn to manage their stress response. Key to improving your mental well-being is looking at it holistically. So looking at your nutrition, your sleep, your physical, your exercise, and also your mental well-being, but also having a very holistic approach that's actually looking at it from a top-down, bottom-up. So things that senior management are bought into, that they're actively all looking at. Because key to making cultural changes is all about getting everyone holistically to improve their mental well-being. Likewise, about having different strategies and different KPIs in place in terms of actually actively being able to measure the success and therefore being able to implement those changes. So why do organisations need to look at mental well-being programs? Well, key to helping people manage stress, it's about having creating an organisational change. And this is actually a research study that found that success rate of 80% of interventions aimed at reducing burnout was more successful when it was combined with individual and also organisational changes. It was getting everyone actively to improve, to look at their well-being, not just physical well-being, but also mental well-being as well. So again, looking at, I suppose, in terms of, and again, some of the CIPD came out, their well-being pyramid was looking at companies' culture, so making sure that senior management, people management and the culture are also all focused on well-being. And how can technology help? Well, one of the best ways or some of the ways we see companies integrating technology, like the PIP and other biofeedback, is looking at it in terms of perhaps doing stress management seminars. So if you're doing those tools, so making people aware of stress, but giving them a practical way to actually visualise a stress response. We tend to hear a lot of senior management going, that's great in theory, but actually I don't need it. Where biofeedback is really useful is it lets people identify, well, actually, if you're demonstrating a relaxation technique, you can see in real time, okay, that does work for me, but also it's a really practical tool to help someone then walk away and actively practice those techniques. Because key to managing stress, it's all about creating new habits. It's all about changing your stress response. Part of that is about staying in control, but also giving you a memory prompt as well as a way to proactively help you practice those different tools. So this is just one of the tools we have in terms of helping people manage engagement. So you will have seen the dashboard at the end of that ladies' PIP session. That's her individual session. Key to changing a culture, key to changing organisational well-being, it's all about creating different challenges and creating different ways to help people practice. So one of the tools we have available is where companies can actually create company challenges. So you can challenge your HR versus sales teams or different teams, but having a really positive goal, a mental well-being goal. So perhaps saying numbers of sessions. So like you might do physical race challenges or you might do nutrition challenges. So for whether that's getting everyone to actively do 5K races, you can also challenge people in terms of their mental well-being. But again, with a really positive goal in mind. So how can you put that into practice? One of the companies we've actually been working with recently have introduced what's called a STEM challenge. So they decided to look holistically at their employees' sleep, to help their employees sleep, think, eat and move better. Now how they did that is they actively created, across the company, they put team goals in place. So they broke it into teams of 10, and together over 3 months they had to do 6 million steps, 4,800 hours of sleep, 1,200 PIP sessions, and they also decided they originally decided this goal to not track not to track diet, but they gave people different goals or different nudges to help them improve their diet. What they also put in place, not just these challenges, but they also put active tools in place to help their employees achieve these targets. So one of the things they did is they actually created a kilometre circuit around their office, and they actively encouraged walking meetings. So rather than doing a meeting in an office or in a breakout area, they actually went on 20-minute, 1 kilometre walks. So it's a way of encouraging people to actively, all together collectively work towards their team goal. Likewise, in terms of, as was helping them think better, they actually made PIPs available for them to actually use them during their day and told people or encouraged them to take 5 minutes out, schedule 5 minutes in their diary as a way to help them take 5 minutes out to relax their or to take 5 minutes out to improve their mental well-being. But what they did that was really, really good was looking at holistically and also looking at it as an organisation. So collectively, they all worked together to achieve these different goals. So how they actually track that as well is in terms of in terms of move and sleep. They gave everyone different fitness trackers. So what they could actually collectively see is, well, they were all working towards their team goal. Was everyone actively working towards that? But also putting in place different tools to help those that perhaps were not contributing as much to actively encourage them all to do it. And I suppose some of the potential challenges in terms of looking at mental well-being, one of the first things is that one size doesn't fit all. We tend to see a lot of companies introducing things like mindfulness workshops, which are mindfulness meditation as a technique is fantastic. It's a really good way of helping someone focus. But some of the challenges are, first of all, it's very hard for some people to know, well, actually, what do I focus on? They might understand the concept of it, but walking away, it's very hard to know, well, what do I focus on? And also, am I doing it right? Equally, it's one of many different tools or different relaxation techniques people can try. And it's all about helping someone identify, well, what can they do themselves to improve their mental well-being? Likewise, as that previous example demonstrated, it's all about creating an organisational change. So looking at well-being holistically, but also putting in place different nudges to help someone actively improve their well-being. So whether that's their diet, whether that's walking more, whether that's helping them improve their mental wellness or even sleeping better. Likewise, I suppose, and one of the points there is lack of clinical evidence. There's a lot of talk around different well-being or different tools you can use. As a company, for us personally, the clinical evidence behind the PIP is very, very important. We've over about 20 institutions incorporating the PIP into different research studies, looking at a variety of different areas. So whether that's looking at using the PIP as an intervention or using the PIP as a measurement tool as well. And the first study was actually peer-reviewed in one of the leading psychology journals. Again, it's about making sure whatever approach you decide to take, that actually there is that evidence around it. And likewise, looking at things like data security and different ways that you're taking measurements and making sure that they are being stored securely, and also that they're something that are meeting all legal and all ethical protocols. I suppose in terms of some final takeaways, first of all, mental fitness is something we should all be actively improving. So just like we all know the importance of physical fitness, mental fitness is the exact same concept. It's all about taking regular breaks to actively improve our mental well-being, and also developing different techniques to help us stay in control of our stress response. Because stress affects everyone, it's part of everyday life. It's all about us identifying, well, what can we do to stay in control in the moment, but also recover after a stressful situation. And key to putting different mental well-beings in place, it's all about creating sustainable change. So making sure that you have senior management buy-in, that you've got KPIs and different ways of measuring success, and ultimately that you're looking at changing the company's culture. Because key to changing well-being is all about having an organisation or a culture-wide change. And finally, stress isn't bad for us. It's just about finding our sweet spot. So it's all about us identifying what can we do to stay in control, but also actively taking those different breaks to help us improve our resilience or mental well-being.